Hello, so I wanted to make this short video to talk a little bit about my experience with plant medicine, sacred cacao. Now, I'm not going to get into the details of what sacred cacao is because there's a lot of videos on that. So if you want to do your research and learn exactly about what that means, you can, do your research. But I just wanted to talk about the experience I had a few days ago using plant medicine. I've already done two ayahuascas, and I then decided to move forward with trying this different medicine. Okay, so I did sacred cacao. Preparation was, you know, uh, 12 hours, no food, so I had an empty stomach, and it was in the morning. So the ritual started probably around 10:30, close to 11, and it ended at about 3 o'clock. So it was a full day of it. Not like the ayahuasca, which was weeks of preparation, and also having to do a dieta, and as well as um, a whole weekend session. I didn't have to do a whole weekend with this. This was just a one shot deal, and I had an amazing experience. So it first started with, I arrived, I was able to drink the cacao. The way it's prepared is just like hot cocoa, but it's not it's not hot cocoa. So it's not the same as that. It's from the same plant. However, the way it's prepared is it has no preservatives, no sugars, and you drink it warm. It's a little on the bitter side, and you have to drink it rather quickly because it coagulates if you let it cool. So as I was drinking that, I also ate a small dose of what you call mushrooms, magic mushrooms, and my experience then started with, I noticed that things were starting to look a little on the yellow. So everything had like a yellow tinge, like a yellow glow. And we proceeded to go into the woods and set up. As I was walking towards where we were going to set up, everything seemed really bright, and I was breathing, like it felt like I was breathing in very clean air. Um, So we picked our spot, and the facilitator allowed for me to look for a place that called me. And I found a spot where there were five trees, kind of like in this, and I sat right in the middle of the five trees. Um, there were other trees facing in my direction, and then you could see woods everywhere. So it was very private, and it was just her and I. At first, when I was sitting down, I was trying to notice, that what was changing. And I noticed that the leaves and everything looked brown and a pinkish hue to the color of the brown. So I knew something was happening at that point. She began to channel, and as I looked at her, I could literally see on her right side of her face, she literally had a line. It looked like a light, and it was a line, and it turned to be a channel. She was channeling my son, who recently passed away, which is the reason for me looking into plant medicine to continue my healing journey, and to try and get some closure and some clarity about everything that happened, because I'm as a mother, I'm brokenhearted. So as she was channeling my son, she began to speak like if she was actually hearing him, and some of the things that she did say were hitting home, and indeed was, my son talking. Um, so I'm gonna get beyond that part. Okay, so I got to speak to my son. He mentioned, where he went, how he felt when this whole thing happened, and um, I was able to do that. So then it started where the the leaves had geometric type shapes, and the green was a little a brighter green, and the trees look like when you wear 3D glasses and watch a movie that's 3D. So everything was very single. Like the trees looked like there were individual trees that were moving individually. Some of the grass, some of the roots started to look like they were moving on their own. And the wind started to feel different on my skin. She proceeded to leave and leave me alone, but she did ask me to try and use my other senses. So I closed my eyes and I focused on other senses. She asked me if I could smell anything. And at first I couldn't smell anything. And then I could smell water. And she said that there was a pond nearby. When she left, I also noticed that I had heard a rooster singing, but the rooster was very nearby and she didn't hear it, but I did. There were roosters, but they were far, but I heard them very near. Um, so when she allowed me some space, I closed my eyes and I meditated on the plant medicine. I meditated on what was happening inside. And when I closed my eyes, I started to have visuals of what first looked like a rose. And then the rose was folding into itself. The rose had purple, dark purple, some black, and then the foundation was like a dark gray. And then from there, more colors started coming up. And then the rose changed into many different shapes. They look liquid form, like a liquid and fuzzy liquid moving into itself, folding onto itself. And then it became a tapestry of white flowers with orange and yellow, and it had a black outlining, and it all was folding into itself, and it was like a water flow to their movement. I focused deeply in the tapestry because it was just so awesome to see, like the white flowers, the orange, the yellow, and all these colors, just kind of mesmerizing. It was like hypnotizing. Really cool. I loved watching it, and I started to feel my body heavy, and the patterns were getting very intense. Sometimes I would open my eyes, and when I opened my eyes, I would look at the trees, and the roots were almost like they were animals, like they were literally alive. At one point I looked down at my arm and I saw what, the little twigs that are from that fall from trees that are from pine. One started walking on my arm, on my right arm, and I saw it and it looked like it was flesh. So I took it and I put it down, and it came crawling back on my hand, on my arm. And I grabbed it again and I put it down, but it definitely felt like flesh, and it was a little piece of pine needle that transformed itself on me, and it was walking on me. And I thought that was very cool. So I was looking at the trees. She signaled that she was going to call me soon to go to the mat. So I closed my eyes again and I started seeing more of the patterns, more colors. I would open my eyes, look at the leaves. Everything was alive. The whole forest came to life. When I closed my eyes and I felt wind on me, it was hitting my blouse, and it felt like there was literally somebody touching me, and it just felt like alive. It didn't feel like wind. It felt like someone actually touching me. Um, I also remember that there were a lot of communications coming in, and I felt that it was from the trees. The trees were talking to me, and there were entities starting to try to communicate. And I know there were entities because they had voices and they were trying to message. One of the entities was like happy to see me, and I noticed that the other entities, which were the trees, and or I felt were the trees, I could hear like a conversation, and it was like wow, like it felt like this is what they were communicating. We haven't seen her in a long time. Let's go talk to her. And as that was happening, she was signaling me that she was gonna come get me soon again. And I could hear, small whispering of music in the background. And she was like several feet away, like a little walking distance away. So it wasn't her, it was definitely other things that were starting to come near me. I remember that one of the feelings that I got was one of the entities that was coming towards me. These were old friends of mine that knew me. And one of these entities kind of resembled a polar bear. But I couldn't see the face, but just the body was huge and it resembled a polar bear. And as he was nearing me, he was getting close to me. The facilitator came, and the group that wanted to technically chill with me, they wanted to hang out, like kind of like how you gather with a bunch of friends and are gonna do a fire pit, and they're all chilling. So this is the same vibe that I was getting from the trees wanted to chill with me that way because they hadn't hung out with me in a long time, including the polar bear entity. But anyway, so the facilitator came, and we proceeded to walk towards where the mat was. The mat area. I don't know if I can insert a picture. I'm gonna try to, but she had set it up. Well, just she put a tarp, and then she put just a blanket, very minimal setup. And as we approached, I felt my body was very heavy, hard to like really like walk almost. I was definitely under the influence of the medicine. I laid down, face down, and I just laid down and I kind of just let it take over. As I was focused on the visuals that I was getting, the tapestry came back, the flowers came back with the orange and yellow and white and the black. All those flowers were starting to come back into my vision. I was laying face down, and as I am laying face down, I could feel, I'm starting to cry because I'm feeling brokenhearted about, my son and his passing. And I'm hurting because of so many things that I have experienced in my life, and it all came to the forefront. So my face started oozing out this clear mucus, and at first I thought it was just like a runny nose, but it was more than just a runny nose. It was like unstoppable. It was like a faucet of mucus that was coming out of my eyes, my nose, my mouth, and I couldn't stop it. Like I tried clearing my face, and I was just at one point I felt defeated because the mucus was just so much that um I couldn't stop it. Um so my face was right in the mucus at that point, and I felt like my face was sideways, but when I look at the picture that she sent me, my face was literally face down. I was completely face down into it. um okay, so I'm feeling this overwhelming sorrow and I'm sobbing, and as I'm sobbing I'm feeling the roots underneath me magnetically pulling me down. It was pulling my chest down, and I can feel the magnetic pulse. My arm at that point was feeling like when you lose circulation. I had no circulation on my hands, no circulation on my arms, and I didn't care. I just left them that way, and I let the mucus continue to come out. I'm crying, I'm sobbing to the point of just I can't express the level of pain that I was feeling. Because I'm feeling that I feel the roots really sucking me in. So at that point, I felt like my chest cavity had opened and my heart was being magnetically pulled down by the roots underneath the tarp. And it was like a magnet. So they're pulling me down. I'm feeling contorted, even though I was totally fine. And I told her that I felt like I was being sucked down to the roots. The facilitator said, remember, if it's feeling like it's against your will, you have, free will, and you can, tell them to back off, or you can pull yourself out of it. And at that point I said, not yet. So when I said not yet, I remember that it really sucked me in. She walked away. I can smell the sage that she was burning around me, and she would blow air on me every now and then. I felt that I had a blanket on me. So that whole time I'm thinking that there was a blanket on me. Where in fact there was no blanket on me. It turned out it was just my pants, my clothes, and the wind that she was blowing on me, and the sage. She did tell me that the sage formed into a blanket over me, and it was behaving different. So, out of all the smokes, the sage with the lavender, and I think it was just white sage and lavender. That's the one that was covering over me like a blanket. Uh, so while that's happening, I'm hearing the music in the background. So she's playing music and she's also singing songs as I'm going through all of this. Now it feels like this is happening rather fast, but we were there a few hours, right? The roots are pulling me in, and I close my eyes, and I completely let go and release myself into the sobbing, the pain that I was feeling. As I'm feeling this pain, the roots took me down underneath the ground, and um, I could feel myself going into this place where it was like a village underneath the ground. It was like a colony, and there was an older lady there and a sister. It was called a sister. So it was an ancient lady and a sister. The sister was smaller than the older lady. The way they looked, they were brown, so they didn't look really human. They actually looked like kind of like Native Americans, but not really Native Americans. They looked like tree parts, but also native. And I think there were roots. So they started talking to me in supposedly my language, the language that I speak, and I started talking to them in that language fluently. So we were communicating very well, and they literally took me into their village. They were showing me where I'm from, and they literally told me, "This is where you're from. This is your language. This is who you are. This is where you come from." And as they're talking, they're showing me underneath the root system. I was able to see codes. I was able to see the fingerprints, or the prints, the internal prints of the tree system. And I went into the root system and the prints of the root system and the codes inside. And the codes inside, the reason I know I went in there, because when I dove in, I could see the patterns of what those codes look like, and they were telling me that these are codes. These are codes that are my language. And I understood it. I understood the codes, and I was verbalizing this. So the facilitator could hear me telling her that they're showing me in there. that they took me down to where I'm from, and they were showing me where I was from. I actually drew a picture of one of the signs that I saw. Um, it looked like, I don't know if you can see it, but it looked like this. Okay. So I saw that. I went right in there, and those were doors too. So it was like a door, and I went right in, and I became part of the root. Um, they were so happy to see me. They hadn't seen me in a long time. They hadn't talked to me in a long time, and I felt at home for the first time in a very long time. I felt like I belonged there, not like here on Earth where I feel like I don't belong anywhere. And there I felt at home. I felt like, oh my God, like finally I'm back. Like when you go on a long trip and you miss being home and you're feeling homesick. That's sort of the feeling that I had. I was comfortable there. Um, and I felt like I had some status. For some reason, I felt like I had a place that was my place. As things were changing, I remember that the roots were really, surrounding me. They were inside me. It was like, at first it felt like it was a snake. Then it changed from a snake to a dragon. From the dragon, it changed into a bird. The bird's blood was in me, it flowed through me, and I was part of the bird. This bird was a very big bird. And I could see the DNA. I can see inside the movement of the blood. It looked kind of like the movement of octopus. Like imagine a really large octopus all over, just grabbing and touching and going in me and going out of me. And it was almost like surfing, but I was surfing inside a root system that was a blood system of a bird, and I could see everything in it. From there, it looked like a tree, like a very large tree. I saw eyes everywhere. This place was covered in eyes, and I came up the tree, and the arms of the tree had eyes. There were ladders on the tree branches, and I was part of it. Like I was deeply inside this tree. Now, she asked me, I said, I see eyes everywhere. And she asked me, what do the eyes mean? And I said, those are their eyes, they're codes. The codes were DNA, and the eyes were letting me see the DNA codes of the tree and the blood system that I was in and was inside me. Really cool stuff. Like, man, I just wish you could see it. Um, Very psychedelic, like, you could see patterns. Just it was mystical, and it was like through me, like through my chest, out my chest, in my mouth, out my mouth, through my eyes. It was the most beautiful experience. Very strong. It was actually overpowering. Like I didn't want to stop. I wanted to continue. I wanted to continue to feel that. As I was completely engulfed in feeling this, they were all talking to me, and they were like showing me around. It was like happy that I was back there, and it had been so long since they saw me, and they were happy to show me around and showing me, like reminding me who I am and where I'm from. And they were happy to do that. It's been a long time since they had seen me, and all these trees were completely involved in this. I could also hear the trees in the background, the wind in the trees, and they were very, very active. So I could hear the actual while I was, because I'm completely while this is happening, I'm completely conscious. I can totally feel myself in the real form, but I'm also completely underground. My body was completely sucked in at this point, very sucked in. Like I felt contorted into the ground, and the flow was still happening. The bird was me. I was this bird. Um, I also remember at that time, so I'm speaking their language, and and I'm crying, and as I'm sobbing, I could hear the language of the roots, and it was like a fluttering sound, wind through my throat, and at the same time a vibration. So it felt like it was just a vibration that was coming out, kind of like a just a vibration, but coming from my throat. And it was the language of them talking to me and me communicating with them, my real people, while all this is happening and I'm seeing this bird. The facilitator starts blowing air at me. She's blowing like like wind and doing the sage around me and singing. I'm hearing the music, and I'm going with the music, and the flow is going with the music inside. The wind, I asked her, "What are you doing?" She said, "I'm blowing wind at you." The wind was the wind underneath the bird's wings. So while she's blowing at me, I felt the bird over me, and the bird was blowing this wind on me, and the bird's blood was inside me at that time. Uh, when that's happening and I'm hearing this music, everything quieted down, and now I know that God is talking to me. So I felt God coming down, and I actually wrote it down. So I'm going to read it from my notes, because there was so much that happened that I was trying to remember everything that I experienced. Um okay, so when I was crying but sobbing deeply, full pain, very wide scope. The pain that I felt wasn't just for my son. The pain that I felt engulfed me, and it was pain that actually felt like I was crying for humanity, and I was crying for all of the pain that humans have experienced. Um, and I was told, so I was crying but sobbing deeply, full pain, very wide scope. It was inside the ground. I cried for Abram, for humanity, and it told me that this is your language, the language of pain, the language of the earth crying out to God for the bloodshed. I didn't utter words, just vibrating, uttering, grunting, rumbling, but the roots were moving like an octopus inside the ground, and they heard everything and were with me. They were comforting me, hugging me and supporting me. I felt completely supported by this root system inside me. I saw an image of a bird, as you know, that's the bird that I was talking to you about. And let me see. The blood of this bird was inside my blood. The bird was an ancient bird that no one knows anything about. I focused on the shapes sucking me in. My arms and my chest and my legs and face are completely sucked like a magnet. Um, I feel the pulsating feeling of them like pulling me in. As that's happening, I feel my left arm starts getting really, really hot. And it feels like it's lit. I now start hearing the voice of God. And mind you, when I hear the voice of God, it wasn't like a big rumbling voice. It was like he was present and everything else shut down. So there was no other voices talking at that point. And he said he doesn't normally talk or does this, but came to tell me that he heard me, that I speak his language, the language of pain, the language of the earth crying out to him for the bloodshed of humanity. It's code language, he said. Mothers can reach him. He gives mothers the ability to reach him, not females. Okay, it's not just females, it's mothers specifically. He said they're trying to silence mothers, and I put in parentheses the abortion movement, because mothers can reach him. He then showed me a place where he intends to put all the wicked people who have hurt his people. It was a dark place where the sky is foggy gray. It is like a port, gray stones, built with gray stones, and they're going there, but not his people. Now, this is the when I saw that, that was like a jail. It was a really big. It looked almost like a lighthouse, but no light. There was no windows, no light, and it was built with these giant blocks. Um, and he showed it to me from afar, not very near. So, he didn't want to bring me close. He wanted me to just see it, to know that it existed. All right. God said that he doesn't care about our boxes. He doesn't care about our limitations, our ideologies. They have nothing to do with him. And when he was saying this, I felt his authority. He doesn't care who gets offended by this. So I'm saying this, as it happened. So just know that God does not care about the limitations that we're putting on him. And he's actually, quite frankly, not happy about it. He does not live by our rules. And the way he said it was like he doesn't care about um the limits that we're putting on him, because even in the Bible we're putting limits on his ability, and he doesn't care. Not even, he says he doesn't live by our rules, and he doesn't answer to us. To be sure to convey that message if I tell the story. So God, then he showed me image of my mom, my sisters, and my daughter sitting. So they were just sitting, they weren't doing anything, just an image of them. And he said that they have the protection as mothers. They have protection as mothers. He let me feel compassion. At that point, when I saw them, I felt this sense of compassion for them. Like, like, wow, they're under God's protection as well. And I felt this compassion. My left arm was hot, and he said that I was there. As I'm feeling my arm hot, I'm telling the facilitator not to get near. She said, why? And I said, because he doesn't want you to. And I remember that. He didn't want her to get close, because my left arm now was the burning bush, okay? And I saw a silhouette of Moses um, in the burning bush. So the silhouette looked like what would be Abraham, like an ancient person, or Moses. And I saw trees. So as I'm seeing the burning bush, I remember that my arm was very hot, and I became part of the bush. And then God said, you were there, that I was there. In the beginning, I was with him. I'm getting chills as I'm telling you this, because it was so real. The burning on my arm felt real, and I was inside the burning bush. I could see the arm of the burning bush, and I can see the DNA codes inside the bush. It was moving, kind of like with the octopus and the all that what that was happening. I could see the movement inside the bush and the light, and I can feel my arm warm. I can see the DNA in the bush. A branch of the bush was now moving, and I was inside the branch, and I saw the patterns in the branch. He said to me that I am an ancient, not an ancient one. He said specifically, I'm an ancient. I'm an ancient. I am a tree. So he told me, I'm an ancient and I am a tree. I was there with him in the beginning. He gave me a humble form to experience humility as a human. So, I've always wondered why he made me this way. And, like, I don't consider myself anything special, and I've been through a lot of things, and I consider myself humble. But I guess he gave me this humble form so I can experience humility as a human. He showed me the bird in the conversation, and I asked him, what is this bird? And he said, a bird you know nothing about. And I understood it to be that the bird was so majestic that it didn't need an introduction. He wasn't going to bother to explain it, and I wouldn't understand anyway. The bird was too majestic for us to understand. It has no name and it needs no introduction. And God is not going to try to bother to explain it to anyone. So the bird's name is the bird you know nothing about. Kind of like the same way he says his name is I am. Same thing. The bird is a bird you know nothing about. Um, the bird, he also said in the conversation that he was, was like a telepathic almost. Like I understood he was talking, and I had a lot of questions in the back of my head, but I wasn't really like asking him questions. It was that the questions existed and he was responding to them. Don't assign our own understanding to his works. He does everything from understanding everything and not with our own understanding. We think very limited. And then he told me, um, this bird's blood was in me. I was inside the bird at first, like a snake, then it was a dragon. Um, so then I asked him, what is the issue with China? And when I asked that, he briefly showed me like an image of little Chinese kids playing with toy cars or toy train. It looked like toy cars or toy trains, kind of like Hot Wheels. And but when he showed me that, I also understood it's basically like a joke to him. What we're doing down here, he's gonna show himself very big. It was like a joke to him. He's not worried about it. And then briefly just didn't show me any more about that. It's like child's play. But he didn't tell me much more about them. He said he heard me. This is the message that he had for me. He heard me and he will vindicate. So when he said that, I felt very comforted. Like he was letting me know that he heard me. He heard, my pain for losing my son, everything, the pain of everything that we've been through, all the traumas that we've been through, all the bad experiences that I've had while I've been here on earth, humanity and everything all combined into that response. I will vindicate. I heard you and I will vindicate. Um, he doesn't care who gets offended. He doesn't care about our limits, our ideologies. And that the whole thing with Jesus is deeper than people are preaching. Uh, it's inscribed in his people. So when God creates people, he inscribes it in us. So it's not as simple as just saying, I accept Jesus. It's also inscribed inside us, in our tissue, in our blood. Um, when he creates his people, it's inscribed in us. We are thinking limited. It's bigger than just saying, I accept Jesus. It's inscribed in us. And then God said, he heard me. I speak his language and he speaks mine. And it's the language of pain. The language, the language of pain, of when the earth cries out to God for the bloodshed of humanity is my language. That's the name of my language. Um, he said, I am an ancient. I am a tree. Makes sense because I've had a lot of dreams about trees breaking through my floor or me being somewhere and these twigs coming at me and then turning into giant flowers and giant trees and rainbow color fruit. I've had those dreams, and all of that. It all makes sense now. I feel good about the experience and I feel like it was life changing. And I recommend it for anybody that's going through some serious pain, people who have suffered a lot, people who feel alone. And if you've suffered a loss, maybe someone passed away in your life that you loved dearly, um, and you want answers, I recommend this ceremony for you because it did wonders for me. and it was life changing. I no longer feel um insignificant. I feel great, you know. I did some further research after the ceremony, and it turns out that there are these trees. You can look it up on Google if you want. They're called the sisters, and it's a grove of trees, 16 trees in Lebanon called the sisters, and they're ancient trees that are older than 6,000 years. And when I read that, I was completely blown away because I didn't have that information before. But it turns out that it was not like a past life regression thing. It's not past life regression. It's you're still that. It's just you're a different form of energy, but it's not reincarnation. It's none of that. It's the same. I'm still an ancient. I'm still a tree. Even though right now I'm human form, I'm not reincarnated into human form. I'm still connected energetically to the trees. I'm still connected energetically to my real identity, the original identity. So try to find out what yours is. I recommend that you search for plant medicine. I recommend that you try to heal and make sense of your life here on earth, because this is very temporary and God is real. So with all this, I'm just letting you know God is very real, and he's not happy about what some of these people are doing, the abortion movement and all of that. Is to silence us, because mothers are able to speak to God directly, and he gave us that ability. So that's the message, and I hope that this helps someone. Okay, so God bless. And I know that this video is probably long, but and to my son, rest in peace. Oh, I got to know that my son is actually in school in the underground. So he's there. He's learning and he's doing really good things right now. So um I miss him here on earth, but I know I'm going to see him again, and that God has him. He will vindicate. Bye-bye.